the Virginia Cavaliers, who obviously did not end the season the way they wanted to with the horrible tragedy in the shooting that took place around the football team and killed three members of the football team. Um, my heart goes out to them. It's one of the worst things that can happen to a group, and it should never affect any community in any way. Um, but as they try and move on and build a program with Tony Elliott at the helm, um, most notably, Brennan Armstrong is gone. He transferred to NC State um, to rejoin with Robert Anae, who was the offensive coordinator when Bronco Mendenhall was at Virginia. And, they had success together, and now Brennan Armstrong wants to see if he can replicate that success that he had in 2021. Dontavian Wicks is also gone. He was sort of Brandon Armstrong's go-to target. He is in the NFL now. And obviously, whenever you lose a quarterback and an offensive weapon like that, that's huge. But really, I go back to what happened at the end of last season, and I think it's going to be hard for a lot of the people around the program to move on from that. These are guys that are together for practically an entire calendar year preparing to play this sport, and the relationships that they develop, they last the rest of their life. And to lose three essentially brothers to such an evil act is really hard to move on from. And I think that's going to reflect on Virginia's season in a negative way. But coming in, you have wide receiver Malik Washington. I think he's trying to replace that Dontavian Wicks role. I don't think he'll come in and be wide receiver number one, but he will give you that slot receiver, maybe wide receiver number 4 role to help out your new quarterback. You also bring in a 4-star linebacker and cornerback in Cam, the linebacker being Cam Robinson and the cornerback being Cam Kelly. Cam Kelly coming from UNC. Really good additions on the defensive side. I think Virginia needs help on both sides of the ball, and you've done that with these additions. And with that, I'll roll right into strengths. I think wide receiver is a strength. I think the way that room has developed with what Robert Anae left there for Tony Elliott to build off of, he did with being able to use Dontavian Wicks in an effective way. Even with bringing in a new offensive system for Brendan Armstrong to work in, which didn't really have as much production as he did in 2021. The receivers still got a lot of experience just being in game and seeing those routes against corners in the ACC. And I think it'll still be a really good position group for the Cavaliers. Weaknesses, the offensive line is very young, very inexperienced. And that is a big concern. You look around at the Virginia buzz, what people are saying about this Cavalier football program. And that is their main concern, is the offensive line. I'm also concerned with the defense. I know I said that Cam Robinson and Cam Kelly are good additions, but two players is not enough to make an entire defense. I think there will be bright spots on the defense, but I don't think that they are necessarily enough to round out a complete defensive unit. And so defense is definitely a concern for me for the Cavaliers. But let's get into the schedule. You start off week one. Doesn't get much tougher than this. Against number 12 Tennessee. Tennessee is a very, very good team last year. They were practically top 10, even top 5 for most of the year, until they lost Hendon Hooker to injury. And Joe Milton, he comes in at the number 2 spot on that roster, and he steps into games to at the end of the year to replace Hendon Hooker. And I know he was in the South Carolina game, but basically he excelled. Against Clemson's defense, he torched them. And Clemson basically has every other starting player is going to be playing in the NFL on their defense. And there aren't many defenses in college football that can say that. Alabama, Georgia. Other than that, maybe Ohio State, maybe Michigan. Not a whole lot. And so I think this will be a loss for the Cavaliers, mainly because Virginia is definitely not at that level that Tennessee is at as a program. I think this game will be over by halftime, which is unfortunate to say, but I think that says more about how good Tennessee is than where Virginia is at. Because I think, as I was indicating earlier, emotionally, I don't think Virginia is still past what happened last year. And I don't expect them to be. Because it's something that you can never really get past. Nothing will ever be the same. But then you go to week 2, and you play James Madison at home. I think this will be a win. James Madison, they're Division I now, and they played really well in their first season. I think they started 6-0 or something like that. They had a very good first year in the FBS. But I think with the talent level that you have and the coaching that you have, I think Tony Elliott is a good coach, and he's the right person to build Virginia into a contender. I think he guides you through this game to win by about 2 or 3 touchdowns. I think he'll have you ready to rebound after that loss to Tennessee. And then you go at Maryland. Maryland still has Tua's brother, I believe. I think his name is Talia Tagovailoa. And Maryland's at the point where they think they're ready for a Big Ten division run. I'm not so sure about that. They have to get past Michigan, and Michigan is going to be very good. They basically got the same team from last year, just with more experience. And I don't think Maryland will have enough depth to get past that. But playing Virginia, this is an old school ACC rivalry. These teams used to play all the time. And the rivalry is getting renewed this year. And I think Maryland gets the win. I think the Cavaliers lose on the road. Maryland, always very hostile towards the old ACC opponents. When they were in the ACC, they practically hated everybody. They had a rivalry with Virginia. They had a rivalry with NC State. They realistically, they had a rivalry with basically everybody. Duke, Virginia Tech, Boston College. They had a bone to pick with just about everybody. And I think they get one on you here, Virginia. Then you play NC State at home, which is a return for Robert Dene and Brennan Armstrong, going back to their old stomping grounds. And I think this is kind of a revenge game for Brennan Armstrong, in his mind. Well, from what I've seen, Brennan Armstrong did not have any hard feelings towards the way Coach Elliott treated him or changed the offense. I don't think there's any spite with that. However, I think there's a certain attitude with him about the offense that he works in, and how it builds him. It sets him up for success. And I think that plays into this game. He wants to prove that the offense that Coach Ney ran with him is better than the one that Tony Elliott brought in. Now, I don't think there will be anything that indicates that that's what he wants, that he wants to prove that specifically to Tony Elliott. But I think that's what he's thinking. That's why that's why he went to NC State, to go back with Robert and I's offense to boost his draft stock, and I think to prove how effective it is for his skill set as a football player. Can disagree with me. It may not. He'll probably publicly deny it. I really think that's what he's thinking, though. But I think NC State wins because it is an effective offense. It's also a very effective defense at NC State. They've got Aiden White and Peyton Wilson, with Tony Gibson leading that defense. He really likes to dial up his pressure. And with an inexperienced O-line, that's just the perfect storm, from my perspective. And NC State's defense, swamps the offense, and the Wolfpack get the win. Then you go at Boston College. Boston College is looking for a rebound season. And I think they will have a bit of a rebound season after going 3-9 last year. Phil Dracovic did leave the program, but I think the passing game will still be fine. The running game will be improved. The offensive line will be improved with the transfers that they brought in. The defense will do just enough with that weakened secondary. And I think you lose to Boston College on the road. Then you play William & Mary, an FCS opponent. I think you'll get the win. William & Mary is not very good at football. Then you have your bye week, and then you play at number 21 North Carolina. Uh, the South's oldest rivalry. Just a little fun fact: Virginia and North Carolina. It is the oldest college football rivalry in the South. That's why the Auburn Georgia game is called the Deep South's oldest rivalry, because they can't say the South because the Virginia North Carolina game is older. Drake May is a Heisman Trophy candidate, possibly. He's at least on the watch list. Depending on how well he does this year, he'll probably get an invite to New York. Don't know if he'll win, just simply because of the defenses he has to play. If he beats Clemson, maybe. But if you've seen my UNC video, you know I don't think they'll beat Clemson. I don't think they're going to have a very good year with the receivers that they lost, the defensive players that they lost, and the new offensive coordinator. I think they're going to struggle this year. I don't, however, think that they're going to struggle against Virginia. I think Drake May will basically ball out in this game against Virginia's defense. Obviously, Cam Robinson and Cam Kelly and a few other players will make some plays on defense, particularly Cam Kelly, because he'll probably want some revenge on his old team. But obviously not enough as a whole defensive unit to stop Drake May, who is a very dynamic player, very hard to stop. And you take the loss at UNC. And then you play at Miami. I think this is another loss. Tyler Van Dyke is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the ACC. Tough to play on the road. Not a very good defensive unit as a whole. You take the loss. Then you play Georgia Tech. You kind of had an upset win against Georgia Tech last year. Brent Key had the Yellow Jackets on a 2-game win streak, I believe. And then their starting quarterback, Jeff Sims, got hurt. And you were able to shut down their offense because of that. And you pulled off an upset win in Atlanta. And I think that's in the back of Georgia Tech's mind. You know, Brent Key, from everything that we saw last year, got a lot of effort out of his players and made them play physical football. And I think we'll see that again. You know, he has that Alabama experience being their offensive line coach. And he has that ability to extract as much potential as possible from the players that he has. And you're seeing that in the recruiting. They are trending upwards. I think Georgia Tech made the right hire with keeping Brent Key around. And I think the trajectory of both of these programs is going up, but I think Georgia Tech is going up at a faster rate. And I think Georgia Tech, as a team right now, is more complete than Virginia. So I think the Engineers win in Charlottesville. Then you play at Louisville. This is the most 50-50 game on Virginia's schedule. I don't think Louisville is going to be as good as people have been saying. I understand that Louisville has an easy schedule. They don't have to play a lot of the tough opponents in the ACC. That being said, and I said this in my Louisville video, the style of offense that Scott Satterfield had at Louisville is not fit for the quarterbacks that Jeff Brom brought in. I understand that they have an off season to prepare. That doesn't mean that the practices that they're having now with their own defense is going to prepare them for when they play a secondary like NC State or Kentucky, just to name a few. With that being said, I do think Jeff Brom is better as a coach than Tony Elliott. He's proven himself more at the head coaching job, with what he did at Purdue, and I think simply based on that, the Cardinals win. And then you play Duke at home. Duke has trended upward majorly in the football world of the ACC after the 9-win season that they had last year with Elko and what Riley Leonard did, which really surprised a lot of people. I think this is a loss. I think they're a more complete team. The program at Duke is in a lot better spot than Virginia is. And then you play Virginia Tech, who has a new coach, Brent Pry. I also think that they'll struggle just simply because it's the first year, growing pains. But I think you take the loss. Virginia has not beaten Virginia Tech very many times this century, and I think that trend continues. I think just overall, Virginia Tech cares a lot more about football than Virginia. That may be a controversial statement for a lot of Virginia fans, but I think it's the truth. If you look at the series between the two teams, Virginia Tech has had the upper hand pretty much for the past 20 years. And as I've said in previous videos, I think that Tony Elliott is the right guy for this project. But this project is not like a 4 or 5 year project. This is a 7 to 9 year project. It's going to be very hard to get people to want to commit to a program like Virginia with the state that it's in, the lack of football history at Virginia. There's very, very limited amount of people that can play elite level football that would want to commit to Virginia over, say, Virginia Tech. And I know it's upsetting to hear as a Virginia fan, but I think that's the truth. I think you've got to have a guy that, like Brent Key, extracts as much potential as possible out of the talent that he's given. And I think Tony Elliott is a guy that can do that. But it's going to take some time. You got to have some patience. This is only his second year. So, only winning 2 games, I think that's perfectly fine. You want to start seeing maybe 4 or 5 wins next year. And then possibly the year after that. And then you want to start seeing 6, 7 wins over the next 2 years beyond that. That shows growth. That shows the program trending in the right direction. And the recruits will notice that. And that's basically how it's going to have to be for Virginia to get better. So I'd like to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank everyone who subscribed. And I'll see you for the next video, which will be Virginia Tech.